part 2 of our podcast, looking at all of the teams in the NFL using our stock market draft game. If you missed picks 1 to 10, then you can go back on YouTube and check the previous video. You can do that just by clicking on the Utter Punts name and checking through the videos list. If you liked and subscribed, that would be absolutely massive for us as well. If you're listening on the podcast, then you've heard me say this 4 times already, and you're probably entirely more bored of me saying it. So without any further ado, let's get into picks 11 to 20. We'll probably be a little bit quicker through these just because there's a little bit less to actually talk about. So we will start with pick number 11, which went to Dave Keane.
Yeah, so I basically looked at this from a perspective of 3 years ago. There was a team who won the Super Bowl. They were a brilliant team. They sold out to get there, and that basically led to them having a couple of awful years. Fully get it, but they've got Cooper Kupp, they've got Puka Nakua. I said Puka Nakua, which is a great name, but it's not right for him. Puka Nakua, and like
That's what happens after a Vindaloo.
Yeah, that's it. They've got Kevin Williams, who I think is a massively underrated running back. Like last year, I can't think of anyone else who looked anywhere near as physically dominant as him. So he's going to be their punt returner this year as well, potentially their kick returner. It's going to be exciting to watch these Rams. And Sean McVay, for me, much as I love Andy Reid and respect what he's done, like Sean McVay, who's not even 40 now, still for me the best coach left in the league in terms of being able to scheme things up, adjust for the weaknesses that they've got. They had no right to even make the playoffs last year, get close to it, and yet there they were right there at the end of the season. Like they had no right, but this year they had a very good off season. They've got additional talent in. They've bolstered the O-line a little bit, improving it with coaching as well as like bringing in a little bit of outside reinforcement. And for me, they're a team that last year they massively performed ahead of what people expected for them. They were 19th in the draft, and yet I still see massive amounts of room for improvement there. I said I shouldn't talk like this, and then I've gone straight into a ramble. Sorry, guys. Crack on.
I don't disagree. I think the Rams should be a good football team this year. I think they obviously lost Aaron Donald, which is a huge subtraction on the defensive side. But outside of that, they've still got a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Stafford, and like you said, the receiving core and stuff like that. So I think the Rams will be good. Again, one minor caveat: the competition in their division. They're in the same one as the Cardinals, the 49ers, and the Seahawks. So that'll be tough. But I expect them to at least match, if not better, last year.
Yeah, just a great pick, solid pick. I can't disagree with anything Jim or Dave said. Yeah, that's all.
Cool. Well, that was nice and easy. Now, this is really interesting. So, last season when we did the stock market game, my approach to it was, if you choose the worst team from the year before, you're bound to get some points. That was kind of my thought process, except that's not what happened this year. And the people that know what they're talking about didn't pick the worst team last year until now, Jim.
Yeah, and I'm going on the basis of being a Browns fan. You can only lose 15 or 16 games a season for so long. Eventually, you have to win 3 or 4. I think my pick's the Carolina Panthers at 12. I've got a good friend that's a Panthers fan. And he assures me that they'll be better this year. I don't believe him massively. I think they will be marginally better, but I don't think they'll be hugely better. They've spent $160 million on 2 guards in free agency to try and keep Bryce Young upright. Is Bryce Young the answer? I think we look at the 5'10" quarterbacks in the league like Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson over the last few years, especially not in the Seahawks scheme, and say, well, that's a difficult evaluation to make. Haven't got a lot at wide receiver still. Thielen's probably still their number 1 target. They did draft, was it Xavier Legette? I think
I liked him a lot as well, but he's injured.
Yeah, so again, look, the Panthers aren't going to change the world, but the pick was based on they can't get any worse. And hopefully now that they've actually invested in the O-line, Bryce Young won't be running for his life on every snap. So that was the logic there. Could well come back to be me being in the same position as you were last year, Liam. So we'll see how it goes.
Look, I just got absolutely fisted last year, and every pick that I made. So look, you can't do any worse than I did last season. I was led down the garden path by this bunch of twats, and our boy hook, line, and sinker.
By Dan, not by me.
Don't you start, Boomtown punt. Right, my camera's overheating, so it's telling me off. Anybody else on the Panthers, or are we at the position where, you know, Jim's explained it, they're not brilliant, but they can't do any worse than they did last season?
Just quickly, we've gotten you. Oh, sorry, go for it.
I love Xavier Legette. He's the most southern man I have ever heard talk. If you ever listen to him talk, his accent is absolutely phenomenal.
He's awesome.
He's a really good dude. I don't know how good he's going to be as a player.
He's going to be good.
Guy, class.
He's going to be similar to Metcalf, I think, or Debo. Like that kind of big-bodied, good after the catch, should be able to catch anything guy. But it's Dave Canales, the former Tampa Bay Buccaneers OC. He's now the head coach. So they finally do have a competent organiser of an offence there. This is the last chance for Bryce Young for me. I've never been sold on him. As I always do, when I think I don't think a QB is going to work out, I hope I'm wrong. But I think he's going to get hit at some point this year, and he's not a big guy. He's not a big guy. Could hurt.
Okay, moving on from the 12th overall pick to the 13th, and we're still with Jim. So who did you go with at 13, Jim?
Denver Broncos at 13. Main reason for this is Sean Payton's now got a little bit more of his own people in the offense there. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. I think when he was with the Saints, he obviously had Drew Brees running that offense. So there's a bit of a difference between Drew Brees and a rookie Bo Nix. I think it's fair to say. And obviously Nix is going to start. The backups they've got there are Jarrett Stidham, I think, and Zach Wilson, who flamed out of the Jets famously last year. So, I think the Broncos are another one. Not going to improve. I don't think they're going to improve massively. But I don't think they'll regress from where they were last year. So this was a bit of a safe. This was another safe pick that I went, and that's probably the theme of my first four. To be honest, is a bit of safety first. There's not really much more to say on it. I mean, I personally, from what I saw on Bo Nix in college, he didn't look like he should be drafted anywhere near where he was. He was a 3rd or 4th round quarterback for me. But, you know, he could turn out to be, if Sean Payton gets his hands on him and turns him into the next Drew Brees, then, you know, at the end of the day, what do I know? So I'm fine with that. So, yeah, that's the rationale for the Broncos.
Ollie?
I can't stand Sean Payton. I think he's a vile creature of a human being. I think he looks like Emperor Palpatine. I think he's tried to make everyone think he's super smart by picking Bo Nix, because that was the only option he had. Maybe he will be the next Drew Brees, but I agree with Jim. Like, I don't think the Broncos are going to suddenly end up performing like, you know, the Chargers or the Jets last year, but I don't think they're going to be great either. So that's my thoughts on them.
Jeez, Emperor Palpatine. That's
It's a fair one.
It's harsh.
Bantygate doing the skull chant when he thought that they were going to beat the Vikings until the miracle in Minneapolis happened, because even Karma took pity on the Vikings at that point because of Sean Payton. So I'm not knocking those sentiments. You are a horrible little man, but you are really good at coaching quarterbacks. And quite honestly, I think I'm one of the few people who looked at last year's bunch of QBs, and I genuinely thought that Bo Nix will be more successful in the league than Caleb Williams.
Fair enough.
You're probably the only person in that respect, Dave, to be fair.
I know, probably the only person in the world. And it was literally because Bo Nix, for me, cares. He's intelligent. He tries to learn things. He is humble with people around him. He can play in a system. Now, the system that he played, he is a system QB, but it was an NFL system. So for me, that kind of translates. It's a little bit dink and dunk, but then, like, once you get in a rhythm, you can start to extend your play. For me, he's going to be a safe pair of hands this year with a head coach who's got an awful lot of his own ego riding on his success. So I think he's going to be good with Bo, and I think he's going to look after Bo, and but only because of his self-serving self-interest, because that's who you are, Mr. Payton.
I think that if Mr. Payton's solicitors are listening to this podcast, I think what we should say is that these are all personally held opinions, and that
completely personally held.
Yeah. Don't come for us. Thanks. Right, moving on before we get ourselves into any further trouble, and we are back to Dave, which is not exactly the first place that I go when I wanted to get out of trouble, but there we go. Dave, you've got pick number 14.
So, Brian Callahan, the new head coach at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans came to a little bit of a halt under Vrabel, bit of a shame, because I quite liked him as a head coach. I'm expecting him to get another job at some point, although he is a bit run first. But then, with Harbaugh in the league, we could see that fashion taking off again. I mean, quite honestly, he's got Will Levis, Malik Willis has now left, so Will Levis has won that battle of QBs taken in the second round. I'm expecting them to be, or third round I think it was for Willis actually, but the truth of the matter is I'm not expecting them to improve that much. It's just they were 7th lowest in the league last year, and we're getting to the halfway point of this draft now, and like honestly, identifying teams that you think are going to improve, it's becoming a lot more of a challenge now that most of the main contenders have gone. So it's a safe fallback pick for me. But they are in a division with the Texans, who might regress a bit with a sophomore QB, and the Jags, who have looked quite decent this off-season. But again, they all seem to only want to get to about 9 or 10 wins in that division. They don't seem capable of much more. So if the Titans can put together a little run, who knows, that could sneak into the playoffs and that could pay off big, and it won't cost me too much if it doesn't.
Cool. Jim?
Don't rate him. For lack of a better term. Don't think that. I think Dave's hit the nail on the head in terms of where we are at in this draft at the moment, in terms of looking at teams that are going to stand still, or just improve one win or lose an additional game. The Titans are in a similar position to the Raiders, in my opinion. They don't have a quarterback. Levis is not their guy. They don't have anything from a backup perspective either. They've got some decent defensive players. They've obviously got DeAndre Hopkins, on offense. But outside, they've got a few flashy players here or there, but they haven't got any depth. They haven't got consistent quality across either the offense or the defense. There's weak spots all over that roster. I think the Hopkins thing was a massive surprise to me, because it didn't make any sense that he went there in the first place. So I don't think I'm not expecting much from the Titans this year.
Ollie, it's to you before you make your next pick. What have you got to say on the Tennessee Titans?
I agree.
Right. I mean, that's beautifully succinct, mate.
That's what we pay him for.
Yeah, it's a good
That's
job
what
we
we
pay
want
him.
at this stage, though, right?
It is a good job that we pay him by word as well, because that was a remarkably cheap answer. Let's move it on then, shall we? Away from the Titans and on to pick number 15, which was Mr. Ollie Keynes.
I picked the Miami Dolphins. A slightly riskier one. I've kind of gone for a theme of solid pick, risky, solid pick, risky, I think. So I'm going to keep going with that. I mean, Dolphins, they've still got Tua Tagovailoa, who they've decided is their franchise quarterback, because he kind of was the only option they could take, extending him. I love Mike McDaniel, just like Dave does. I think he's a great guy. And I don't know if anyone's seen, but the side-by-side picture of him in his first year and now, how much Miami has changed his look, is quite hilarious. But that doesn't really affect their football game. Tyreek Hill, everyone argues between probably him and Justin Jefferson for who's the best wide receiver in the league. He's another year older, though. that could play into it. Jalen Waddles, so they've still got their 1-2. A-Chain and Mustard, running back, they were great last year. Offensively, I don't think they're going to regress at all. I think they'll keep improving. They've got their head coach for the future. He just signed a contract extension, deservedly so. But there is that one next step that Miami has to take, which they haven't been taking, is getting those playoff wins under their belt. A bit similar to Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings, really, in terms of, you got to get those playoff wins under the belt. I think, I don't think they'll regress. My only worry is they have lost a few defensive players like Andrew Van Ginkel and Christian Wilkins. But I do think they'll get that playoff win, and it may only be a couple of points, but I think at this stage, like the boys said, it gets harder to pick.
Yeah, and I think we all spoke quite highly of the Dolphins last season. I think we all thought that offense was good fun to watch whenever they were on the TV. It's just whether they can go one step further, and I'm not sure they can. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think they will. I don't think they've improved enough. I think they're kind of a little bit now strangled by the contract of Tua. It meant that they lost some good players off their defence. It might take a little bit of time to draft enough players to organise that through, but they'll not regress a lot. I can see them finishing very similar to last year. It's just I think that there is a team in their division who's improved a lot, and that's why I had taken them any earlier than mistaking them here, though it's more than fair.
Yeah, I agree with what both the guys have said. I think one additional wrinkle to the Dolphins side is that their top two pass rushers in is it Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips both tore their Achilles or ACL in like late in the season last year. So missing that, along with Christian Wilkins, who signed $27 million a year contract wherever he at the Raiders. That's a lot to lose on defense, and their defense wasn't all world anyway, especially when they came up against good sides. I think the Dolphins beat up well on poor teams, but when they get faced with someone who actually can scheme against their defense and put Tua under some pressure, then they come a little bit unstuck. And I think that trend will continue this year. And I think they're a candidate to pretty much stand still. That I have them improving by maybe one win this year. And that's just based off Mike McDaniel. Because again, as the guys have said, he's an absolute ledge. So
the very epitome of a flat track bully, as we would call them in footballing terms. Right, let's move on to Dan's back-to-back picks here. And it's interesting. He's gone the same kind of way that you guys have just gone, which was low stakes. So he's tried to find a couple of picks here that are not necessarily going to get any worse, but might not get any better. The first of those for pick 16 was the Patriots. So he's decided that the Patriots, well, he says they're not very good. That's not the word he uses. And they're in a tough division, but they're better at quarterback, even with Brissett starting ahead of the rookie Drake May. They've added good young weapons and will be tough to beat. Ultimately, they get points not being the worst team in the AFC. They aren't. See the Raiders. So low stakes pick won't make the playoffs. I kind of understand where he's coming from there. He's done exactly what you three have done with your recent picks, and that is try and find somebody that's not going to regress too hard from the mean, right?
Agreed. What did they win last year? 4 games? 5 games? 3. So I think, to be honest, to get them this late, bearing in mind what our logic is a somewhat of a relative steal. I think I don't agree with his assessment that Jacoby Brissett's better than Matt Jones. I think Matt Jones has been hard done by. We've discussed that in the off-season podcast. I think Brissett didn't look good enough to come out of this as the concrete starter against Drake May, who was supposed to be a 1-year sick quarterback. So that concern.
You've seen his happy feet. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I think it's a bit of a concern. I'd be a bit concerned. I mean, I'm not concerned because everyone hates the Patriots, and I think that's more than fair, to be honest. So yeah, I think it's a good pick because, like, again, they can't get much worse, and they've obviously changed their head coach for the first time in 25 years or whatever it is, and that dynasty's now left the building in its entirety. So they are starting afresh. I think they could probably get to 5 or 6 wins this year. They are the worst team in their division, with the Jets, the Dolphins, who and the Bills, who are all playoff contenders, as we've already discussed. So again, they could go 0-6 in their own division, which is never a good start for a team looking to improve. So it is what it is. But yeah,
I often draw comparisons, rightly or wrongly, between the Patriots and Manchester United. Like winning franchises that go on huge runs that everybody dislikes because they were so good for as long as they were. But then you have to look at what happens when the winning managers aren't there anymore. When that coaching setup disappears, what happens next? Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes getting out from underneath somebody like Bill Belichick is a good thing. But sometimes the grass isn't necessarily greener. Let's move on to pick number 17, shall we? For Dan, he's gone with the Saints for 17. He said the NFC South is not very good. Again, not the word he uses, but someone's got to win it, and whoever does get a top 8 seed in a home game. Carr's average, but they have the talent to win games. Chris Olave could blow up this year, and they're good on defense. A solid team to make the playoffs, bearing in mind the division they're in. And I would like your opinions on that, please. Ollie.
I just think the Saints, they are, at the minute, as a franchise, they're in cap hell because of what the previously mentioned Sean Payton did, selling his soul to win a Super Bowl, except he's not as good as Sean McVay, just my opinion. They're just a boring franchise at the minute. I think they went 9-8, was it, last year? I don't know, that seems to be the favoured score in the NFC South, that kind of record. I don't disagree with his assessment, though. It wouldn't surprise me. They have got some talent. They're kind of solid, but they're not really exciting.
They're so boring.
It's probably the worst division in football, right? When you look at who's in there.
The Saints are so boring that their head coach has got the 2 boring first names as his name. Dennis Allen.
That is
Sorry
boring.
to all the Dennises.
They are boring, right.
But when you combine that together, it's boring. He was also DC under Payton. So he's a leftover from regimes at the moment. He's eating the table that he helped to set when they were making those decisions back in the day. I don't anticipate him being the coach there still at the end of this season, but I can see him finishing mid because it is such a mid-division, as Dan said.
Cool.
I have nothing to add on that. I think I agree.
Great. Let's move on then. We'll try and get 11 picks done in this section, in part 2 of our preview, which means that we've got 4 left to go. We are starting those 4 with Ollie, who has pick number 18.
I have picked the Philadelphia Eagles because for 2 reasons. One, if they improve, then I get more points and more likely to win. If they regress, I hate them and I won't care because I'll be happy to see them fail. And number 2 is a lot of the time teams I hate end up going on to be successful, so I'm going off that judgment, really.
So you've decided to support them so they lose?
Yes.
I mean, it worked for us last year when we started doing it.
It's an emotional investment from Ollie. He's protecting his feelings, isn't he? Is just if they start losing, then great.
But they're not a bad team, let's be honest, the Eagles, in terms of who they've got on their roster. But they have lost Jason Kelsey, which is a big person in the locker room to lose, and, you know...
Big position to lose, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, you know, they really ended badly at the end of last season. Not surprisingly badly, Dave called it, that they would regress in such a way, because they were getting lucky at the start of the season with a lot of their wins.
Coaching, right?
But we'll see. Like I said, it's purely out of an emotional investment one way or the other.
They've done a fairly good job this year of refreshing their coaching staff. I think it's a better attempt than they made the year before. Sean Desai's gone and they've got Fangio in there. He enjoyed his time with them as an advisor a couple of years back. They've brought in Kellen Moore, who's the OC for the Dallas Cowboys. The only thing I'm a bit confused about is how he fits, because he's always been a drop back attack passing OC, and that's not Jalen Hurts' strength. I'm hoping that they stay around the same. I don't think they're going to improve. I don't think they're going to get any worse. I think they're going to stay around the same, and I think that'll be it then, and they're going to fire their head coach. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think if the Eagles could play a full season, then they'd be in line to be one of the biggest improvers, because they seem to be able to manage about 10 games and then they fall off a cliff. Whether that's mindset, coaching, or whichever. I agree with Dave's point on Kellen Moore. Obviously, his last 2 stops have been with the Cowboys and the Chargers. So he has had mobile quarterbacks in Prescott and Herbert, but to limited success. Obviously, Dak hasn't got his new contract at the moment, and Herbert went 5-12 last year. So there's no great level of success there. So we'll have to see how that goes. But again, they're a team that needs to play more than half a season. If they do, I think they can improve 2 or 3 wins. I think they've got good depth across the board. I think they've got a few players that need a bounce back year, like Brad Britt, cornerback, who's moved to safety and things like that. So I think they have got some good players. Hurts, obviously, highly paid quarterback now for them. So it's just all about getting them moving in the right direction after their bye week, as they just don't seem to be able to finish the season, and that's happened the last 2 years in a row.
Any more on the Eagles? Right, lovely stuff. Moving on to Dave's pick number 19.
Number 19, Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not going to say a lot about it. I don't think they're going to be that much better. I don't think they're going to be that much worse. I think their defense is pretty good. I like Josh Allen's changed his name. Because someone look it up for
make
me.
it easier for everyone.
Josh Allen's changed his name. He's appendaged it. So the QB Josh Allen has won the name war despite having lost most of the games to the other Josh Allen. Is it Josh Allen Hickmanson or something like that now?
Josh Hines Allen.
Josh Hines Allen. Yeah. So the name battle is over. At last, the Jags pass rusher will be able to get some merchandising deals in his own right.
Did we do this? Because we basically said that it was a battle for the names, and then we went really big on Utter Punts, the fact that he'd lost, and then all of a sudden he's changed his name. Do we think that Josh Hines Allen might actually listen to Utter Punts, and he's listened to what we've said, and I'm going to go with it. I'm just going to say that that's what 100%. Happened.
100%. There's coming no other plausible explanation.
Why not? Nick Bosa's listened to us, or at least watched a few of our shorts. So why not? And besides which, we're always very complimentary. He's a very good player.
Just not as good as the quarterback, Josh Allen.
Well, I mean, like overall, I feel like the Josh Allen who finally decided to split off and become a different Josh Allen. Overall, I think he had the most wins. It was only 1 win for the QB Josh Allen against the other Josh Allen. Anyway, it's getting really complex now, and we're wasting time. The Jags up here about the same. We're in a tough division with the Texans. I expect them to be there or thereabouts, but maybe miss out on the playoffs, maybe sneak in the playoffs, dependent on how the head-to-heads with the Texans go.
Cool. Anybody else on the Jags?
I think they'll make the playoffs. They've obviously got the highest paid quarterback in football now in Trevor Lawrence, which is an interesting one because I think he's been inconsistent. To be honest, he's having $55 million a year, so not bad, especially in Florida with no income tax. So happy days on that one. But yeah, I think depth-wise they're in a pretty good spot. They've got it's them and the Texans in that division. So barring a catastrophe either quarterback or on the defensive side of the ball, they don't have a lot in the secondary, I would say. The Jags will be there or thereabouts, and I expect them to make it into the wildcard playoffs.
Amazing. Ollie?
I just want them to do well for Pat, if you're watching Pat, so I hope the Jags do well, mate.
We do love Pat. He turns up to all of our live shows like a good egg and just brings great vibes wherever he goes. So I hope you're doing all right, mate. Right, Jim, we're going to get both of your back-to-back picks here before we call it a day for part 2 and move on to part 3. So you've got pick 20 and pick 21. Which way around did you pick them? So
pick 20, I've gone with my Cleveland Browns. I can't say I have faith in Deshaun Watson.
I was going to say, you haven't got a QB, mate.
So yeah, look, I think I've watched him this off-season, and to be honest, he has looked better than he has done in the last couple of years. But I think it's me trying to convince myself that he's not terrible than anything else. There's obviously the character concerns there as well, but ultimately, I think we started 5 quarterbacks last year and got to an 11-6 record. I think if Deshaun goes down, we're in trouble, because I don't think Jameis Winston, he's too erratic to really do anything prolonged. Thompson Robinson's not. Came in for a couple of games last year and didn't set the world on fire. So, look, it's very much live or die by the quarterback, and I'd much rather have a different quarterback than the one we'd be living or dying by, but it is what it is. I think we've strengthened overall with Jerry Jeudy coming in via trade. I think that'll be a pretty good trade and work out quite well for us. I think we've got a good receiving core. Obviously, Nick Chubb's out for the first 4 games, but when he's back, he's a top 3 or 4 running back in the league, providing he can still stand on 2 legs. Offensive line, all good there, apart from at left tackle, where Jedrick Wills seems like he's asleep most weeks. So that's a bit of a concern, I think. And we had the number 1 defence in football last year, and I don't expect us to be far off this year. To be honest, we've returned pretty much everyone from that team that we had last year on the defensive side of the ball. Our secondary is the best in the NFL in terms of cornerbacks and safety tandems. Linebackers probably our weakest piece on there, but we've improved there as well. So yeah, I think from a Browns perspective, I'm expecting us to win 1 or 2 more games than we did last year, providing there's some stability at quarterback. And we've demonstrated that we can win in spite of Deshaun instead of with him. So I'm fine with that.
Dave? Ollie was wetting himself laughing. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. I love Jameis Winston. His speeches.
Oh yeah, big fan.
I love Jameis Winston. His speeches, he should be a motivational speaker instead of an American football player. They're fantastic. You either love him or hate him because he is so erratic, but I think he's fantastic.
Did you see him interviewing a fish that they caught on a fishing expedition in the middle of a lake? He just put the microphone at the fish's mouth as it's gasping for air on the side of the boat. It was genuinely brilliant, but yeah.
I really like him, but he's not a great football player like Jim alluded to, which is why if Deshaun Watson does go down, they're kind of screwed, but who knows?
Sean Watson, what makes you think he might get injured?
Who knows, mate? It might not be an injury.
It might be what's happened since you signed him. But yeah, I mean, I don't expect you to be too far away. I just don't expect you to improve too much either. And I think your QB situation just got a hell of a lot worse without changing when you decided to free up 36 million in cap by basically giving him, what is it, 150 million guaranteed if you cut him next season, and then 90 million guaranteed if you cut him the year after. I saw
he's
that.
Fully guaranteed anyway, so he didn't really.
I know it is fully guaranteed.
It's accounting in that respect, and I think one thing that partially we did that to free up salary cap room if we were going to look at a Brandon Ayuk trade from the 49ers.
Okay, that would be interesting. That would give you some weapons.
And obviously that's failed, and he's signed a new contract now. But also with the cap rollover in the league, it gives us a lot more spending flexibility next year, because I think we're predicted to be about 24 million over the cap already next year.
Not anymore. Now that you've done that, you're basically only 4 million over, which isn't a bad place to be. Before you've done any restructuring, etc. So, it might be 4 million under. I can't remember. But,
yeah, so Browns at 20. 21 is the Bills for me. The Bills are the Bills. I don't think they're as good as they were a couple of years ago. They might as well have me and Dave catching passes from Josh Allen in the wide receiver room, to be honest with you. If you're listening, I can put my phone number in the comments at the end if you want to give me a try. I can run some 3-yard out routes and stuff like that.
I've seen him going untouched against
Oh
his
mate,
dog
I've been
and his
into
daughter.
the end zone untouched from 1 yard out a number of times. So I think this one is one that I think they're going to get slightly worse. But it was the least worst that I could find in that respect.
And that's where we're getting to now, and I think that's going to be a bit of a theme as we go into part 3 of this podcast. It's going to be who's going to be the least worst or the least risky pick as we go forward. I think you're absolutely right. I still like the Bills. I still think they're a great team to watch. I still think that they'll be right up there this season, and I think that's probably a fairly solid pick. Anybody got anything to say on Jim's pick of the Bills?
I want nothing more than to see Jim play wide receiver at the Bills.
Look, if somebody can give Jim a tryout, that would be absolutely sensational. Which quarterback in the league do you think you'd be best suited to working with, Jim?
Oh, now there's a question. I mean, I think I could take some backhanded passes from Mahomes any day of the week, or whatever Travis Kelce can do, I can do better. So, no doubt about that. But
does that include Taylor Swift?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, mate. Without a doubt. As long as it's not Deshaun, I'm not touching those hands or going anywhere near anything that's touched those hands. To be honest, I'm good.
I think that's a wonderful place to leave part 2 of this podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, don't forget that we'll go straight into part 3. If you're watching on YouTube, we will release part 3 in a couple of days' time. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and turn the notifications bell on. It would be brilliant if you could recommend us to a friend too. Absolutely brilliant. Right, recap for you. Pick number 11 to pick number 21. 11 was the Rams, 12 was the Panthers, 13 was the Broncos, Dave, Jim and Jim. Dave then went again with the Titans. Ollie picked the Dolphins at 15, and then back-to-back picks for Dan. 16 and 17 were the Patriots and the New Orleans Saints. Ollie went Eagles at 18, Dave went Jags at 19, and then a double pick from Jim were the Browns and the Bills at 20 and 21. We will be back with part 3 of this podcast right after.